You have to co-sign the loan for my dream wedding, my sister-in-law insisted. Family sticks together. I hesitated but agreed, thinking it was the right thing. Months later, they vanished on their honeymoon, boasting about their freedom from the debt. What they didn't know. I'd added a clause they never saw coming. I still remember the weight of the silverware in my hand when my life changed. Tom and I had been saving for 3 years, meticulously tracking every expense in color-coded spreadsheets, all for a down payment on our modest dream home. Not a mansion, just something with enough bedrooms for the kids we planned to have and a small yard where I could finally plant the garden my apartment balcony couldn't accommodate. Friday night dinners at Karen's house were a tradition neither of us particularly enjoyed but dutifully attended. Her split-level suburban home always smelled of potpourri and judgment, especially when directed at me, the woman who stole her eldest son. That evening she'd prepared her signature lasagna, the one where the noodles were always slightly undercooked but we all pretended was delicious. "Rachel, would you mind helping me with dessert?" Karen called from the kitchen. I caught Tom's sympathetic glance as I rose. These helping with dessert moments were Karen's thinly veiled attempts to isolate me for personal interrogations about our finances, my career, or when I planned to finally give her grandchildren. But when I entered the kitchen, I found not just Karen but also Tina, Tom's younger sister, dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. "Perfect timing," Karen said, her voice honey-sweet in that way that always preceded something decidedly not sweet. "Tina has the most wonderful news." I smiled cautiously. "Oh." Before Tina could answer, Karen called out, "Tom. Brad. Come in here, everyone." The small kitchen felt even smaller as Tom and Brad, Tina's boyfriend of 8 months, squeezed in. I noticed how Brad's designer watch caught the light, a stark contrast to the plain timepiece Tom had worn for years. "We're engaged." Tina thrust her hand forward, revealing a diamond that seemed impossibly large for Brad's part-time bartending job. "And we found the most perfect venue on Sanibel Island. It's a dream, Rachel, absolute heaven." "Congratulations," I said, genuine despite the knot forming in my stomach. "That's wonderful news." "The only problem," Karen interjected, "is that these destination weddings require full payment up front. And with Brad's business investment not paying off quite yet." I felt Tom's hand slip into mine under the counter, squeezing gently. "A warning or a plea?" "We just need a little help," Tina continued, her tears conveniently stopped. Her eyes flicked to my wrist where my watch, a recent promotion gift from the financial services firm where I worked as operations manager, sat. "Just a small loan. Or maybe a cosigner. Your credit score is so perfect, Rachel." The silence that followed was deafening. I looked around at their expectant faces. Karen, whose resemblance to Tina was striking in this moment, both wearing identical expressions of calculated need. Brad, whose smirk betrayed his certainty in my acquiescence. And Tom, whose eyes were fixed on the floor tiles. "How much?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Just 40,000, Tina said, as if discussing $40. "The venue alone is 25, but then there's the catering, flowers, my dress." I nearly choked. 40,000 was exactly, to the dollar, what Tom and I had saved for our down payment. "That's a significant amount," I managed. Karen's eyes narrowed. "When Harold and I got married, my sister emptied her entire savings to help us. Family sacrifices for family, Rachel. That's what we do. And when Tom and I got married at the community center with potluck food and my dress from a consignment shop, did anyone offer to help?" The words escaped before I could stop them. The kitchen temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "That was your choice," Karen said stiffly. "You always said you wanted something simple." "Because we couldn't afford anything else," I wanted to scream. "Because we were saving. Planning. Being responsible." "Rachel," Tom finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe we could help a little. Our house fund isn't going anywhere." I looked at him, betrayal burning hot in my chest. His eyes pleaded with me, to keep the peace, to be the bigger person, to not make waves. The same eyes that had lit up when we'd found that perfect craftsman-style listing last month, now asking me to let that dream slip away. "Family sticks together," Tina insisted, reaching for my free hand. "You'd do it for Tom, wouldn't you? And he'd do it for me. That's how it works." In that moment I saw our future unfolding in 2 distinct paths. One where I said no became the villain in their family narrative forever. The other where I said yes and watched our carefully constructed plans crumble while Tina and Brad danced on a beach. My throat felt impossibly dry. I'll need to look at the paperwork first. The terms. Of course, Brad interjected, suddenly animated. It's just a formality though. With your credit we'll get the best rate. I met Karen's gaze directly. You know this is our house fund. She didn't even blink. Sometimes duties to family outweigh personal desires, dear. When you have children of your own, you'll understand the sacrifices we make. Say yes, Ratch, Tom whispered. We can save again. Something shifted inside me then, a tectonic plate of resentment sliding into place. But with it came clarity. Yes, I said finally, the word dropping from my lips like a stone. I'll co-sign. The kitchen erupted in squeals and thank yous. Tina threw her arms around me, her expensive perfume clouding my senses. Karen nodded approvingly. Brad slapped Tom on the back like they'd just closed a business deal. But I wasn't finished. On one condition, I added, my voice cutting through their celebration. We do this my way. My paperwork. My terms. Tina waved dismissively. Whatever you want. Legal stuff is so boring anyway. My way, I repeated, looking each of them in the eye. Or not at all. They agreed, of course. They were getting what they wanted. What did my small condition matter? None of them noticed the steel that had entered my voice, or the calculating look that had replaced my hesitation. None of them knew that in that moment, I'd already begun planning the clause they would never see coming. The morning after that fateful dinner, I texted Jessica before I even had my first cup of coffee. We'd been roommates all through college, surviving all-nighters and heartbreaks together before our paths diverged. Me into finance, her into law. Now she worked as a paralegal at one of the city's most respected firms, specializing in contract law. If anyone could help me navigate this mess, it would be Jess. Corner cafe in 20? I texted. Her response was immediate. Make it 30. Bring caffeine. Sounds serious. The cafe was our old haunt. A place where we'd spent countless hours during college dissecting bad dates and planning our futures. When I arrived, Jessica was already there, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun that signaled her transformation from the carefree girl I once knew into the sharp professional she'd become. You look like hell, she said by way of greeting, accepting the extra-large latte I slid across the table. Thanks. I feel worse. I sank into the chair opposite her, the weight of last night's decision pressing down on my shoulders. For the next 15 minutes, I poured out everything. Tina's tears, Brad's smug expression, Karen's manipulation, and Tom's betrayal. With each detail, Jessica's expression darkened. So let me get this straight, she said when I finally paused for breath. They want you to co-sign a loan for $40,000, your entire savings for a beach wedding? And Tom is okay with this. I stared into my rapidly cooling coffee. He doesn't want to rock the boat. Family peace is everything to him. And what happens when they default? Because they will. Jessica's bluntness was why I'd called her. She never sugarcoated anything. Then our credit is ruined, our savings are gone, and our future plans are dust. My voice cracked. But I've been thinking all night. What if there's a way to protect ourselves? Jessica raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. I told them I'd help, but only on my terms. With my paperwork. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. What if we draft something legal but creative? A document that gives me some leverage if they try to bail on the loan. A slow smile spread across Jessica's face. You want a safety net? More like a trapdoor, I admitted. Something they'd never think to look for until it's too late. For the next 2 hours, huddled over our laptops in the back corner of the cafe, we drafted what would become my insurance policy. Jessica pulled up templates, legal precedents, and statute guidelines. We crafted a document that looked innocuous enough, standard co-signing terms on the surface, but contained a carefully worded clause buried in the middle of page 4. This is genius, Jessica murmured, reading through our creation. It's basically a collateral agreement disguised as a power of attorney clause. If they default on the loan, you have legal rights to any inheritance, property, or significant assets they might receive until the debt is repaid. Is it legal? I asked, scanning the document for flaws. Completely. It's essentially what banks do all the time, just rarely between family members. She looked up from the screen, her expression serious. Rachel, this is legal but ruthless. Are you sure this is the road you want to take with family? I thought about our empty savings account, the house listing we'd have to pass on, the years of careful planning evaporating for Tina's dream day. They made their choice, I said quietly. Now I'm making mine. The next week, I prepared what I called the wedding paperwork package for Tina and Brad. I printed everything: venue contracts, catering agreements, flower orders, and nestled between them our special document. Each page required initials. The final page needed full signatures. I bought a leather portfolio to hold it all, making it look official and intimidating. When Tina arrived at our apartment to sign everything, she was already distracted, constantly checking her phone for messages from the wedding planner. I can't believe how much paperwork goes into one day, she complained, flipping through the stack I'd prepared. Why can't people just trust each other? The irony wasn't lost on me. It's just protection for everyone involved, I said calmly. Standard procedure. As she flipped through the pages, barely glancing at the content, I casually adjusted my purse on the coffee table, angling it so the tiny camera I'd purchased yesterday had a clear view of the documents in Tina's hands. This is all so boring, she said, scribbling her initials where I'd placed small sticky tabs. Brad says I should just let you handle the details since you're so good with money stuff. That's thoughtful of him, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Where is he, by the way? Golf with some potential investors. She rolled her eyes. He says networking is going to be key for his next venture. I nodded, wondering if these investors were as fictional as Brad's last business plan. Well, you're almost done. Just a few more signatures. When she reached page 4 of our special document, I held my breath. Her eyes skimmed the first paragraph, then immediately jumped to the signature line. Whatever, just tell me where to sign, she sighed, tapping her manicured nail impatiently. I trust you. We're family, right? Right, I agreed, pointing to the signature line. Family sticks together. She scrawled her signature without hesitation, then Brad's as his authorized representative, another detail I'd carefully planned for. The camera in my purse captured everything. Her casual dismissal of the paperwork, her voluntary signatures, her verbal acknowledgement of trust. As I gathered the signed documents, a strange calm settled over me. I wasn't angry anymore, just resolved. This wasn't about revenge, it was about protection. Insurance against the storm I knew was coming. All done, I announced, sliding everything into a folder. I'll get these filed right away. You're the best, Tina said, already standing to leave. I don't know what we'd do without you. As I watched her walk to her car, designer purse swinging from her arm, not a care in the world, I whispered a response she couldn't hear. One day you're going to find out. That evening I made copies of everything, stored the originals in our safe deposit box, backed up the video to 3 separate secure cloud locations, and emailed Jessica confirmation that everything had gone exactly as planned. Her response was simple: let's hope you never need to use it. But even then, watching Tom sleep peacefully beside me, unaware of the measures I'd taken to protect us, I knew better. It wasn't a matter of if, but when. The wedding invitation arrived 6 weeks after Tina signed my documents. A thick cream envelope with gold foil lettering that probably cost more than our monthly grocery budget. Inside was a weekend itinerary that read like a luxury vacation brochure. Welcome cocktails at sunset, beachfront ceremony, 5-course reception dinner, and a farewell brunch. The RSVP card requested that guests choose between filet mignon and locally caught grouper for the main course. This is excessive, I muttered, passing the invitation to Tom as we sat at our kitchen table. He skimmed it and shrugged. It's her big day. Let her have it. It's our big savings account. Let us have that, I countered, but the argument was futile. The loan had been approved, the money dispersed, and our names were on the documents. The trap was set even if Tom didn't know it. Florida in May was stunningly beautiful, I had to admit. The beachfront resort sprawled across pristine white sand, palm trees swaying in the gentle breeze. The ceremony site alone featured an elaborate flower arch that must have cost thousands. Crystal chandeliers somehow hung from bamboo poles along the aisle. Everything sparkled: the ocean, the decorations, and Tina's gown with its cathedral-length train that required 3 bridesmaids to manage. Our entire wedding cost less than just her dress, I whispered to Tom as we took our seats. I know, he whispered back, his hand finding mine. But this is making everyone happy. I bit my tongue, watching Karen dab tears with a monogrammed handkerchief in the front row. Everyone except us. The ceremony was brief but elaborate. Professional violinists, handwritten vows, and doves released at the final kiss. I kept a pleasant smile fixed on my face through it all, even as I mentally calculated each expense against the loan balance that Tom and I would be responsible for if things went south. At the reception, held in a glass-walled pavilion overlooking the ocean, Brad tapped his crystal champagne flute for attention. He looked tanned and confident in his white linen suit, every inch the successful entrepreneur he pretended to be. I want to thank everyone for being here to celebrate our union, he began, his arm around Tina's waist. Especially those who believed in our vision enough to help make this day possible. His eyes met mine across the room, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. Tina and I aren't just starting a marriage today. We're starting our empire together. Some people play it safe in life, another pointed glance in my direction, but we believe in taking risks, in living large, in building something extraordinary. I felt Tom stiffen beside me. It was the first time he'd shown any sign of discomfort with the situation. To us, Brad concluded, raising his glass higher. And to those who helped us get here. Your support won't be forgotten. The guests applauded, unaware of the threat lurking beneath his words. I clinked glasses with Tom and took a small sip, watching Tina throw back her entire glass before reaching for another from a passing server. Do you think they have a plan to pay this back? Tom whispered. I think they have a plan never to pay it back, I replied. The wedding weekend passed in a blur of forced smiles and polite conversation. By Sunday morning's farewell brunch, I was exhausted from maintaining the facade. Tina and Brad announced they were leaving directly for their honeymoon. Just a quick 2-week getaway in Greece, Tina gushed, waving her hand dismissively as if a European vacation was a trivial matter. When do you start making payments? I asked quietly when I caught her alone by the mimosa station. Her smile faltered for just a moment. Don't worry about that, Rachel. Brad has it all handled. His new investment is about to pay off big time. What investment is that again? I pressed. You know, his thing. He waved vaguely. With the crypto and the tech startup. It's very cutting edge. I nodded, unsurprised. Just remember, our names are on that loan too. God, you're such a buzzkill, she hissed, her perfect bride mask slipping. Can't you just be happy for me for once? The first missed payment notice arrived exactly 14 days after they left for Greece. I texted Tina immediately, attaching a photo of the letter. Did you see this? Payment was due yesterday. She didn't respond until hours later, dealing with bad Wi-Fi. Brad says don't worry. Just a scheduling mix-up. I might have believed her if not for the Instagram post she'd shared that same morning. A perfectly staged photo of her and Brad on a whitewashed balcony in Santorini, champagne glasses in hand, blue-domed churches in the background. The caption read, Day 14 of our adventure and we're just getting started. #extended honeymoon, #living the dream. 2 days later they were in Athens. A week after that Rome. Then Florence, Barcelona, Ibiza and finally Marrakesh. Each destination featured increasingly lavish accommodations and experiences. Private yacht tours, helicopter rides, exclusive restaurants. Their quick Greek getaway had transformed into a grand European tour. Meanwhile, second and third payment notices piled up on our counter. Tom continued to make excuses for them, even as our own credit score began to drop. They're just being young, he insisted. They'll figure it out when they get back. If they come back, I muttered, scrolling through yet another of Tina's posts. This one featuring them riding camels at sunset in Morocco. Tom looked over my shoulder, his brow furrowing. That's a bit much, isn't it? I mean, they know we're covering their payments right now, don't they? I didn't answer, too transfixed by the caption beneath Tina's latest post. A photo of 2 elaborate cocktails against a Moroccan sunset, garnished with exotic fruits and flowers. Some people pay bills. Some people live. #sorry not sorry, #debt-free. Something inside me, something that had been cracking for months, finally broke. I wordlessly handed my phone to Tom, watching his expression change as he read his sister's words. She can't mean, he started. She absolutely means it, I cut him off. They have no intention of paying this back. They never did. I stood up, suddenly energized by a cold, clear anger. They think they've gotten away with it. That we're stuck holding their bag while they live it up across the world. What do we do? Tom asked, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, he looked ready to follow my lead. I walked to our filing cabinet and pulled out a folder labeled Wedding Documentation. Remember when I said I'd help but we'd do it my way? I opened the folder, revealing the contract and a USB drive containing the video of Tina signing it. It's time you saw exactly what my way entails. Tom stared at the contract in disbelief, his eyes widening as he read through the clause I'd hidden in plain sight. You did this without telling me? His voice was a mixture of surprise and something else I couldn't quite identify. A collateral agreement disguised as standard co-signing paperwork. I had to protect us, I replied, not apologizing. I knew from the beginning they'd try to stick us with the bill. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture he always made when overwhelmed. And the video? You recorded her signing this. I nodded, pointing to the USB drive. Jessica said we needed evidence she signed voluntarily. That she wasn't coerced or tricked. But she was tricked, Tom said quietly. You didn't explain what she was signing. I didn't hide it either. She chose not to read it. I met his gaze steadily. Just like they chose to bail on their responsibilities and leave us holding the bag. Tom paced our small living room, processing everything. The fourth missed payment notice lay open on our coffee table, the red urgent stamp like a wound across the paper. What exactly does this clause allow you to do? He finally asked. If they default on the loan, I have legal right to any inheritance, property, or significant assets they acquire until the debt is repaid. It's essentially a lien against their future. I explained it exactly as Jessica had to me. It's the same protection a bank would take, just rarely used between family members. So what now? We just keep making their payments. The frustration in his voice was palpable. No. Now I talk to the loan officer. I picked up my phone, my decision already made. We need to establish a paper trail showing we tried to resolve this before exercising the clause. The loan officer, Mrs. Chin, was surprisingly understanding when I called the following morning. Her calm professionalism was a relief after weeks of Tina's dramatic evasions and Tom's wavering loyalties. Unfortunately, this happens more often than you'd think with co-signed loans, she explained after I detailed our situation. You have several options, but since the primary borrowers are currently unreachable. They're reachable, I corrected. They're just choosing not to respond. Their Instagram shows they're currently in Morocco at a 5-star resort. There was a moment of silence on the line. I see, she said finally. That does change things. Let me document that in our system. By the end of the call, I had a formal process in motion. Official notifications would be sent to Tina and Brad's last known address and all contact information on file. The bank would also begin reporting the missed payments to credit agencies, something they'd hesitated to do while we were working in good faith to resolve the issue. What did they say? Tom asked when I hung up. Basically that we've been too nice. Covering their payments only enabled them to continue avoiding responsibility. I showed him the notes I'd taken. And every payment we make is an admission that we accept the debt. Tom's face paled. So our credit score is already dropping. And will continue to do so unless we take action. The reality of the situation was finally sinking in for him. I watched as his expression shifted from confusion to anger, the last of his excuses for his sister melting away. That night, as if summoned by our decision to stop enabling them, Brad called. It was 3 a.m. but the harsh ring jolted us both awake. Rachel. His voice was loud, slurred. Music and laughter echoed in the background. My favorite sister-in-law. The responsible one. I put the phone on speaker so Tom could hear. Brad. It's the middle of the night here. Is it? Sorry about that. Time zones, you know. He laughed, but there was an edge to it. Listen, got your messages. And the bank's messages. And Tina's mom's messages. Everyone's so worked up over a few missed payments. 5 missed payments, I corrected. And counting. Details. He dismissed my concern with audible disdain. Look, we're building connections here. Networking. This trip is an investment in our future. Tom leaned closer to the phone. Brad, you need to start making payments. Our credit is suffering, Tom. My man. Brad's tone shifted to false camaraderie. Listen, buddy, I've got this under control. Just need a few more months to get our venture off the ground. You understand? No, I don't, Tom replied, his voice firmer than I'd ever heard him speak to Brad or Tina. We're not covering for you anymore. There was a pause, then Brad's voice dropped its friendly pretense. What exactly are you going to do? Sue family? Come on, Rachel, I know you're behind this. You're so uptight. We'll pay it someday maybe. When we're ready. I felt a cold calm settle over me. Actually, Brad, we don't need to sue you. What's that supposed to mean? His voice had lost some of its confidence. Check your email. I've forwarded you a copy of the agreement Tina signed. Pay particular attention to page 4. I kept my voice level, professional. You have 30 days to bring the loan current, or we exercise our rights under that clause. There was silence, then the sound of fumbling. I imagined him trying to focus his intoxicated vision on his phone screen. This is bull, he started, but I cut him off. It's perfectly legal. And fully enforceable. I glanced at Tom, who nodded his support. 30 days, Brad. Not a day more. I ended the call before he could respond. The silence that followed felt momentous, as if we'd crossed a threshold there was no returning from. He'll call Tina, Tom said quietly. She'll call her mother. Probably, I agreed. Are you ready for that? He took my hand, his grip firm and sure. I should have been ready months ago. I'm sorry I wasn't. The fallout came swiftly. Karen called at breakfast, her voice tight with controlled fury as she demanded to know what stunt we were pulling. Tina texted a series of increasingly hysterical messages, culminating in a tearful video call where she oscillated between threats and pleas. You can't do this to family, she wailed, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. Behind her, I glimpsed the luxurious interior of what appeared to be a Moroccan riad. We're blood. Family doesn't bankrupt family, Tom replied simply. The shift in our dynamic was profound. Each day that passed, each new confrontation we weathered together, strengthened something between us that had been fractured by the initial betrayal. Tom stood beside me, united against the emotional manipulation that had controlled him for so long. And when the 30 days passed without a single payment, without even a concrete plan or genuine promise, I knew it was time. The clause would remain dormant for now, a sleeping dragon waiting for the opportune moment. What if they never get any assets worth claiming? Tom asked one night as we lay in bed, the weight of the situation still heavy between us. I turned to him, seeing in his eyes the growth of these difficult months. Then we've lost the money but gained something more valuable. What's that? The knowledge that we can weather anything together. I squeezed his hand. And the freedom from being manipulated by your family. He nodded slowly, but I could see a question still lingering in his eyes. You planned all this from the beginning, didn't you? You knew exactly how it would play out. Not exactly, I admitted. But I knew enough to protect us. To have a contingency plan. Remind me never to get on your bad side, he said, but there was admiration in his voice now, reluctant but real. Little did we know how soon our contingency plan would be tested. 3 months passed with no word from Tina and Brad beyond occasional social media posts showing their gradually shrinking world tour. Morocco giving way to Spain, then France, then finally back to Greece where it had all begun. Tom and I had settled into a new normal, paying the minimum on the wedding loan while working extra hours to rebuild our savings. The strain had taken its toll, but we'd found a strange new strength in weathering the crisis together. Then came the call that changed everything. The harsh ring of Tom's phone cut through the darkness at 3:17 a.m. I was instantly awake, that primal sense that middle-of-the-night calls only bring bad news. Hello. Tom's voice was thick with sleep. Then suddenly alert. What? Which hospital? I sat up, reaching for the bedside lamp. Tom's face had gone ashen in the sudden light. We'll be there as soon as we can, he said, ending the call and turning to me with eyes wide with shock. Mom. Heart attack. They don't know if she's going to make it. We dressed in silence, moved through the dark apartment gathering essentials, and were in the car within 10 minutes. The hospital was an hour away, near Karen's suburban home. As Tom drove, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, I made calls, to his younger brother Mike in Chicago, to Karen's sister in Florida. No one answered at this hour. Has anyone reached Tina? I asked quietly. Tom shook his head. Left a voicemail. She hasn't responded to anything in weeks. The hospital was a maze of sterile hallways and harsh fluorescent lighting. We found Karen's room in the cardiac intensive care unit, where machines beeped steady rhythms and tubes seemed to connect to every part of her still form. A doctor met us outside, her expression grave. The next few hours are critical, she explained. The heart attack was severe. We've stabilized her for now, but there was significant damage. Tom nodded mechanically, his eyes never leaving his mother's face through the glass window. Despite our complicated relationship, my heart ached for him. For all Karen's flaws, she was still his mother. Can I sit with her? He asked. The doctor nodded. One visitor at a time. Talk to her, hearing is often the last sense to go. I squeezed his hand. I'll be right out here. Hours passed in the artificial timelessness of hospital waiting rooms. I dozed uncomfortably in a vinyl chair, waking regularly to check on Tom, still motionless at his mother's bedside. Mike arrived around noon, red-eyed from the early flight. Karen's sister Janet came by evening. Tina didn't answer any of our calls. Shortly after midnight, alarms blared from Karen's room. Medical staff rushed in as we were ushered to the waiting area. 20 minutes later, the doctor emerged, pulling off her mask with a defeated expression. I'm very sorry, she said softly. We did everything we could. The next few days passed in a blur of funeral arrangements, phone calls, and grief. Tom moved through it all with quiet dignity, taking charge where his siblings couldn't or wouldn't. Mike had to return to Chicago for work but promised to be back for the funeral. And Tina finally responded 3 days after her mother's death with a text message, booking flights now. So sorry. Bad reception where we were. The funeral was held on a Thursday, unseasonably cold for early fall. The small church filled with Karen's friends, neighbors, and extended family. Tom and I stood in the receiving line, accepting condolences from people I barely knew but who seemed to know all about me from Karen's stories. Most of them unflattering, judging by their surprised expressions upon meeting me. You're nothing like how she described you, one elderly woman whispered, patting my arm. Much warmer. I managed a sad smile, wondering what exactly Karen had said about me over the years. Tina and Brad arrived 15 minutes after the service began, slipping into the back row. Even in mourning, Tina managed to look glamorous in designer black, her tan a stark contrast to everyone else's seasonal pallor. They avoided my gaze across Karen's flower-laden casket, keeping to themselves during the reception that followed. The real confrontation came 3 days later at the reading of the will. Karen's attorney, Mr. Harmon, invited the family to his wood-paneled office downtown. Tom and I arrived first, followed by Mike and finally Tina and Brad, who entered with the practiced nonchalance of people pretending not to be worried about money. Thank you all for coming, Mr. Harmon began, adjusting his reading glasses. Mrs. Karen Miller's last will and testament is relatively straightforward. After covering outstanding debts and funeral expenses, her estate consists primarily of her home, valued at approximately $320,000, and investment accounts totaling $95,000. He cleared his throat, turning the page. These assets are to be divided equally between her 3 children, Thomas Miller, Michael Miller, and Christina Miller Reynolds. Tina visibly relaxed, shooting a triumphant glance in my direction. I kept my expression neutral, even as I felt the weight of the document in my purse, the one I'd been waiting months to use. Each will receive approximately $138,000, pending final appraisal and sale of the house, Mr. Harmon continued. When can we expect distribution? Brad asked immediately, earning a sharp look from Tom. Usually within 90 days, the attorney replied. However, he looked at his notes. I understand there may be some complications regarding Mrs. Miller Reynolds' portion? This was my cue. I reached into my purse and withdrew the contract, sliding it across the polished desk. Mr. Harmon, I need to present this document for your review, I said calmly. It's a legally binding agreement signed by Christina Miller before her marriage, regarding a substantial loan for which my husband and I are co-signers. The attorney raised an eyebrow, examining the paperwork. This appears to be a collateral agreement? What is she talking about? Tina snapped, looking to Brad for support. According to this signed agreement, I continued, Mrs. Miller, meaning myself, now controls Miss Miller's inheritance until the loan is satisfied. The current outstanding balance is $43,875, including late fees and interest. The attorney's confusion turned to understanding as he read through the document. This appears to be in order. It's unusual between family members but legally valid. You're kidding. Tina stood up, her composed facade cracking. You can't be serious. That's my inheritance. And this is your debt, I replied evenly. A debt you promised to pay but instead chose to ignore while traveling the world on our dime. Tom, she pleaded, turning to her brother. You can't let her do this. It's Mom's money. She would have wanted me to have it. Tom looked between his sister and me, conflict evident in his eyes. But he simply said, You signed the agreement, Tina. You've had months to make good on it and chose not to. The meeting deteriorated quickly after that. Brad threatened legal action. Tina dissolved into tears and Mike, who had remained silent throughout, finally asked to see the contract himself. Damn, he whispered after reading it. That's cold. Effective but cold. We left the attorney's office with the matter unresolved on paper but crystal clear in reality. Tina's share would be used to pay off the loan, with the remainder given to her afterward. It was exactly the outcome I'd planned for, but the victory felt hollow in the wake of Karen's death. That night, as we lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Tom finally broke his silence. Rachel, maybe we should let it go for the sake of peace, he whispered. Mom would have wanted the family to stay together. I turned to face him, studying the grief etched in the lines around his eyes. I didn't ruin the peace, Tom. I just refused to be the fool. They made their choices long before today. He sighed deeply but didn't argue further. We both knew the truth. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about consequences, accountability, and the painful lesson that family loyalty only works when everyone plays by the same rules. The morning after our conversation, I woke to find an email from Brad's newly hired attorney. The subject line read, Cease and desist, fraudulent contract, and the body contained a thinly veiled threat to sue me for predatory behavior and intentional deception. According to Brad's lawyer, I had manipulated an emotionally vulnerable woman into signing documents she couldn't possibly understand, and abused a family relationship for financial gain. They're trying to intimidate us, I told Tom, forwarding the email to Jessica immediately. Classic Brad, thinking he can bully his way out of consequences. Within hours, Jessica had responded with a masterful legal smackdown, reminding Brad's attorney of the video evidence we had preserved showing Tina's voluntary signing, her verbal confirmation of trust, and her refusal to read the documents despite being given ample opportunity. She concluded with a pointed reminder about frivolous lawsuits and counterclaims for legal expenses. You came prepared for war before a single shot was fired, Tom said quietly, reading Jessica's response over my shoulder. I came prepared for Brad, I corrected. There's a difference. 3 days later, Brad escalated by filing an emergency injunction to freeze Karen's estate until the matter could be settled in court. The hearing was scheduled for the following week, which gave us precious little time to prepare. Will the video be enough? Tom asked as we sat with Jessica in her firm's conference room, reviewing our evidence. It should be, she replied, though her expression wasn't entirely confident. But judges can be unpredictable when family matters are involved. They sometimes prioritize what they see as fairness over strict contractual terms. There's nothing fair about borrowing $40,000 and intentionally never paying it back, I pointed out. Jessica's smile was grim. Then let's make sure the judge understands exactly what happened. The courthouse meeting was set for 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. I wore my most conservative navy suit, the one I reserved for important client meetings, and Tom matched in a charcoal gray ensemble that made him look older, more substantial. Tina and Brad arrived late, her in a demure black dress that seemed calculated to project grieving daughter rather than globe-trotting spendthrift, him in an ill-fitting suit that was either borrowed or hastily purchased. All rise, the bailiff announced as Judge Martinez entered the courtroom. She was a small woman with a no-nonsense demeanor and sharp eyes that missed nothing. After the initial formalities, Brad's attorney presented their case. I had tricked Tina into signing complex legal documents during an emotionally vulnerable time, exploiting family trust to insert predatory terms that no reasonable person would agree to. Your Honor, this was nothing short of fraud, he concluded dramatically. Mrs. Miller took advantage of her sister-in-law's trust and lack of legal expertise. Judge Martinez turned to Jessica. Counselor, your response? Your Honor, we have documentary and video evidence that directly contradicts the plaintiff's claims, Jessica replied calmly. May we present Exhibit A? The judge nodded, and the courtroom screen flickered to life with my hidden camera footage. The quality was surprisingly good. Tina's dismissive wave clearly visible as she flipped through the documents, barely glancing at them. Whatever, just tell me where to sign, her recorded voice echoed through the courtroom. I trust you. We're family, right? My filmed response was equally clear. Right? Family sticks together. The next clip showed Tina signing page after page without reading, laughing about how boring paperwork was, and even taking a phone call in the middle of the process. In the background, Brad could be heard joking about all these stupid formalities when he briefly entered the frame. When the video ended, the courtroom was silent. Tina stared at her lap, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment or anger, perhaps both. Brad whispered furiously to his attorney, who looked increasingly uncomfortable. Were the documents altered after signing? Judge Martinez asked Brad's lawyer. No, Your Honor, but... Was Ms. Miller prevented from reading the documents? No, but she trusted her sister-in-law too. Was there any evidence of coercion or misrepresentation? The very nature of hiding such terms in complex legal language is. Judge Martinez held up her hand, silencing him. I've heard enough. She turned to look directly at Tina and Brad. The court finds no evidence of fraud or deception. The document was signed willingly with ample opportunity to review its contents. The agreement is valid and enforceable. She tapped her gavel decisively. Case dismissed with costs assigned to the plaintiff. Brad exploded out of his seat. This is bull. Sir. The judge cut him off with a glare. Control yourself or be held in contempt. As we exited the courthouse, Tina rushed up to Tom, tears streaming down her face. How could you let her do this to me? I'm your sister. Tom looked at her for a long moment. How could you leave us with your debt while you partied around the world? That's the real question, Tina. With the legal battle settled, I moved forward methodically. Karen's house went on the market the following week. A local developer had been trying to acquire properties in her neighborhood for years to build modern townhouses, and he jumped at the opportunity to purchase Tina's share. The irony wasn't lost on me. Karen had always complained about those eyesore modern monstrosities encroaching on her quiet street. Once the sale was complete, I paid off the wedding loan in full. The remaining balance from Tina's share, around $95,000, went into an account for Tom's portion of the renovation we'd planned for the remaining 2/3 of the house that now belonged to him and Mike. We decided to keep Karen's house rather than sell it completely. Mike was happy to remain a silent partner, collecting rent on his portion while Tom and I transformed the dated split level into a modern open-concept home that finally had space for the family we hoped to start. 6 weeks into the renovation, as the contractors were finishing the exterior paint, a car pulled into the driveway. Tina stepped out alone for once. She looked thinner, less glamorous than I remembered. I watched her from our freshly painted porch as she hesitated by her car before slowly walking up the path. Rachel, she began, her voice thick with emotion. The house. It looks beautiful. Thank you, I replied neutrally. I heard you paid off the loan. She twisted her purse strap nervously. Brad and we're not together anymore. He left when the money ran out. I said nothing, waiting. I don't have anywhere to go, she continued, tears welling in her eyes. Mom's house was supposed to be my safety net, and now? She gestured helplessly. I know I don't deserve it, but I was hoping. Is there any way I could get even a small portion back? Just enough to start over. I studied her face, searching for the manipulation I'd grown so accustomed to seeing. Instead, I found only desperation and something that might have been genuine regret. For a moment, I considered it. Then I remembered the Instagram caption that had broken something inside me months ago. Some people pay bills. Some people live. #sorry not sorry, #debt-free. Wait here, I said, turning to go inside. I returned with a simple black frame containing a cross-stitched quote I'd hung in our new entryway the day before. A reminder of everything we'd been through. This is all I can give you, I said, handing it to her. Tina looked down at the neatly stitched words, "Family sticks together until it falls apart." Her fingers trembled against the glass. "I deserve that," she whispered. "Yes," I agreed. "You do." As she turned to leave, Tom appeared in the doorway behind me. He looked between us, understanding dawning on his face. "Tina," he called, his voice softer than I expected. "We have a spare room until the renovation is finished. You can stay for 2 weeks. After that, you're on your own." She stopped, disbelief and hope warring on her face. "Really? 2 weeks," he repeated firmly. "And you'll help with the work? No free rides?" As Tina nodded eagerly, gathering her purse from the car, I gave Tom a questioning look. "Family is still family," he said quietly. "But this time we're setting the terms." I nodded slowly. Perhaps there was a lesson in that for all of us. Not about blind loyalty but about boundaries, consequences, and the true meaning of sticking together. Some debts, after all, could never be repaid with money alone. If this story of sweet revenge had you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button right now. My favorite part was when Rachel revealed her hidden clause at the attorney's office and the look on Tina's face when she realized her inheritance was going to pay for her abandoned wedding debt. Absolutely priceless. What was your favorite moment from Rachel's journey? Drop it in the comments below. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss another story about family betrayal, clever contracts, and sweet, sweet justice.